Ambassador Vincent Hayes stared at the holographic invitation floating above his desk, its ethereal blue light casting strange shadows across his modest office aboard the diplomatic station orbiting Earth. The symbols shifted and rearranged themselves into readable text as the universal translator processed the alien script. The honor of your presence is requested at the union ceremony of Her Royal Highness Princess Kestra, daughter of Emperor Valdris of the Thalorian Empire, to His Grace Prince Zorian of House Drakemore. The ceremony shall take place on the third moon of Thaler Prime during the convergence of the twin suns. Vincent ran his hand through his dark hair, still hardly believing the unprecedented invitation. In his 5 years as Earth's primary liaison with the Thalorian Empire, he'd negotiated trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and territorial boundaries, but never had he been invited to witness such an intimate royal affair. "This is incredible," he muttered, reaching for his communication device to contact Director Harrison back on Earth. The response came within minutes, enthusiastic approval tinged with barely concealed excitement. Earth's first invitation to a Thalorian royal wedding was a diplomatic coup that could open doors to previously unimaginable alliances. 3 days later, Vincent found himself aboard a sleek Thalorian transport vessel, watching the crystalline moon of Thalor Prime grow larger through the viewport. The surface gleamed like cut diamond, reflecting the light of the twin suns in brilliant prismatic displays. Other ships from across the galaxy converged on the moon, their exotic designs speaking to the vast reach of the Thalorian Empire's influence. The palace itself defied human architecture, rising from the moon's surface in spiraling towers of living crystal that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Vincent's escort, a tall Thalorian official named Counselor Avon, led him through corridors where the walls themselves provided illumination, casting everything in soft, shifting hues. "The ceremony will take place in the Chamber of Eternal Bonds," Avon explained, his voice carrying the melodic quality common to his species. "It is our most sacred space, where the very atoms of the universe bear witness to the joining of souls." Vincent nodded, trying to absorb the cultural significance while managing his nervousness. He'd studied Thalorian customs extensively, but experiencing them firsthand was entirely different. The beings around him were humanoid but distinctly alien, taller than humans, with skin that shifted subtly between pale blue and silver, and eyes that held depths he couldn't fathom. As they approached the ceremony chamber, Vincent could hear the haunting harmonies of Thalorian music floating through the air. Hundreds of guests filled the vast space, their formal attire shimmering, with bioluminescent patterns that created a living tapestry of light and color. "Ambassador Hayes," Avon said, gesturing toward a section reserved for honored guests. "Your seat awaits. The ceremony will begin when the twin suns reach their zenith." Vincent took his place among dignitaries from dozens of worlds, feeling both honored and overwhelmed by the magnitude of the occasion. Through the transparent ceiling, he could see the twin suns approaching their convergence, their combined light bathing everything in golden radiance. The music swelled, and Vincent felt his breath catch as the procession began. Today, he would witness history in the making, a union that would shape the political landscape of the galaxy for generations to come. He had no idea that he was about to become the most important part of that history. The twin suns reached their zenith, casting the Chamber of Eternal Bonds in brilliant golden light. Vincent watched in mesmerized silence as the ceremony began with a procession of Thalorian nobles, their ceremonial robes flowing like liquid starlight. The haunting melodies grew more complex, weaving together harmonies that seemed to resonate in his very bones. Emperor Valdris emerged first, a towering figure whose presence commanded absolute attention. His skin gleamed like polished silver, and his eyes held the weight of centuries. Behind him walked Prince Zorian of House Drakemore, resplendent in deep purple robes embedded with what looked like captured galaxies. The prince's bearing was proud, almost arrogant as he took his place at the crystalline altar. Then came Princess Kestra. Vincent's breath caught in his throat. She moved with fluid grace, her form both alien and achingly beautiful. Her skin held the characteristic blue-silver sheen of her people, but it seemed to shift and dance in the light like captured aurora. Her eyes were a striking violet that seemed to hold storms within them. Unlike the flowing robes of the others, she wore a form-fitting gown that accentuated her tall, elegant frame, a dress that spoke of rebellion even in its beauty. But it was her expression that truly captivated Vincent. Where Prince Zorian showed pride and Emperor Valdris displayed regal authority, Princess Kestra's face held barely contained defiance. Her violet eyes swept the assembled crowd with something approaching contempt, and Vincent realized with growing unease that this was not a willing bride. The ceremony proceeded with ancient rituals that Vincent could barely follow. Counselor Avon whispered translations when possible, explaining the significance of various symbolic gestures and the exchange of ceremonial items that bound the union under Thalorian law. "Now comes the moment of eternal choice," Avon murmured. "The bride must speak the words of acceptance before the assembly." Princess Kestra stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. The chamber fell silent, hundreds of beings holding their breath as they waited for the traditional words that would seal the union. Instead, Princess Kestra's voice rang out clear and strong. "I refuse this union chosen for me by others. By the ancient laws of our people, I claim the right of true choice." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Emperor Valdris's face darkened like a storm cloud, while Prince Zorian stepped back as if physically struck. Vincent felt the tension in the air become almost tangible. "The right of true choice has not been invoked in over 3 centuries. Avon whispered urgently. "She can select any unmated adult present as her chosen bondmate." Vincent's heart began to race. Surely she would choose another Thalorian noble, someone more suitable than... Princess Kestra's violet eyes swept the assembly and locked directly onto his. Time seemed to freeze as their gazes met across the vast chamber. He saw something in her expression: calculation, defiance, and perhaps a hint of desperation. "I choose him," she declared, raising her arm to point directly at Vincent. "The human ambassador. By the laws of our ancestors, I claim Vincent Hayes of Earth as my bondmate." The chamber erupted in chaos. Nobles shouted in outrage, guards moved restlessly, and Emperor Valdris rose from his throne with a roar that seemed to shake the crystalline walls themselves. "This is madness," Prince Zorian snarled, his composure finally cracking. "She cannot choose an alien, a human." But Princess Kestra stood firm, her violet eyes never leaving Vincent's face. "The ancient laws make no distinction of species, only that the chosen be unmated and present at the ceremony. I have made my choice." Vincent felt as if he were trapped in a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. He tried to stand, to speak, to somehow explain that this was impossible, but his voice seemed to have abandoned him entirely. Counselor Avon gripped his arm tightly. "Ambassador, you must respond. The ancient laws require acknowledgement within the span of 100 heartbeats, or the choice becomes void." "But I can't, this isn't..." Vincent stammered, his diplomatic training completely failing him in this unprecedented situation. Emperor Valdris's voice boomed across the chamber. "Daughter, you go too far. This insult to our people, to our traditions. Our traditions give me this right." Princess Kestra shot back, her voice carrying surprising strength. "Will the Emperor of the Thalorian Empire deny the ancient laws that have governed our people since the first convergence?" Vincent realized that every eye in the chamber was fixed on him. The princess had made her choice, but the ancient laws required his acceptance. He could refuse, probably should refuse, and return to his simple life as a diplomat. But something in Princess Kestra's eyes stopped him. Behind the defiance and rebellion, he glimpsed something else, a desperate hope that someone, anyone, would choose to stand with her against the weight of tradition and expectation. Almost without conscious thought, Vincent heard his own voice, saying, I accept." The words seemed to hang in the air like a death sentence. Princess Kestra's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her features as if she hadn't quite believed he would actually agree. "It is done," she said softly, but her voice carried clearly in the stunned silence. "By the ancient laws, we are bound." Vincent felt the weight of 1,000 stares and realized that his life as he knew it had just ended. He was no longer simply Earth's ambassador to the Thalorian Empire. He was now a member of the royal family. The royal chambers assigned to Vincent felt more like a gilded prison than a honeymoon suite. The walls were made of the same living crystal as the rest of the palace, their soft luminescence responding to his emotional state by shifting between cool blues and agitated reds. He paced the expansive room, still wearing his formal diplomatic attire, trying to process the impossibility of his situation. "This cannot be happening," he muttered, for perhaps the 100th time since the ceremony had concluded in chaos 3 hours ago. "I'm a diplomat, not a whatever I am now." The sound of the chamber doors opening made him turn. Princess Kestra entered with fluid grace, having changed from her ceremonial gown into more practical attire. A fitted outfit that seemed to be made of some kind of adaptive fabric that moved with her like a second skin. "Stop pacing," she said, her voice carrying the same authority that had silenced an entire chamber of nobles. "You're making the walls nervous." Vincent looked at the crystalline surfaces, which were indeed flickering more rapidly. "I don't understand any of this. Your customs, your laws, why you chose me. Because you were the only person in that chamber who wasn't trying to use me for political gain," Kestra interrupted, moving to a seating area that seemed to grow from the floor itself. "Sit. We need to talk." Vincent reluctantly took a seat across from her, noting how the furniture adjusted to accommodate his human frame. "Your father looked ready to start a war. Prince Zorian's family is probably mobilizing their fleet as we speak." "Let them," Kestra said with a dismissive wave. "House Drakemore has been looking for an excuse to challenge our authority for decades. They won't risk open conflict over a wedding, no matter how humiliated Zorian feels." "And your father?" Kestra's expression darkened slightly. "My father will rage and threaten, but ultimately he'll accept it. The ancient laws are sacred even to him. Besides," she added with a slight smile, "having Earth's primary ambassador as his son-in-law might prove useful." Vincent stared at her. "Son-in-law? I'm actually married to an alien princess." He ran his hands through his hair. "Earth Command is going to have a field day with this. I'll probably be court-martialed for exceeding my diplomatic authority." "Actually, according to our marriage laws, you're now a prince consort of the Thalorian Empire," Kestra said matter-of-factly. "That gives you certain protections from Earth's legal system." "Prince consort?" Vincent's voice cracked slightly. "I don't know how to be a prince of anything, let alone an alien empire." Kestra leaned forward, her violet eyes studying him intently. "You'll learn. We both will. This situation is as new to me as it is to you." "But you chose this," Vincent protested. "You knew what you were doing." "I knew I was preventing a marriage that would have made me a political pawn," she replied, her voice hardening. "Zorian would have used our union to consolidate power and eventually challenge my father's rule. I couldn't allow that." Vincent was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "So I'm just a different kind of political tool?" Something flickered across Kestra's features. Surprise, perhaps even hurt. "Is that what you think?" Before Vincent could answer, the chamber doors chimed, announcing a visitor. Counselor Avon entered, his usually composed demeanor showing signs of strain. "Your Highness, Prince Consort," he said with a formal bow. "I bring word from the Emperor. He wishes to see you both immediately." The throne room felt even more intimidating than Vincent remembered. Emperor Valdris sat upon his crystalline throne, his imposing figure radiating barely controlled fury. The few courtiers present kept their distance, clearly unwilling to be caught in the crossfire of royal displeasure. "Daughter?" The Emperor's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "Explain yourself." Kestra stood straight, showing no sign of intimidation despite facing her father's wrath. "I exercise my right under the ancient laws. There is nothing to explain." "You have created a diplomatic crisis," Valdris growled. "House Drakemore demands satisfaction. 3 allied houses are questioning our leadership. And you." His gaze shifted to Vincent. "You have inserted yourself into affairs far beyond your understanding." Vincent stepped forward, drawing on his diplomatic training. Your Majesty, I had no knowledge of Princess Kestra's intentions. I was merely attending as Earth's representative. Silence. The Emperor's roar made the crystal walls ring. You accepted the bond. That makes you equally responsible for this chaos. The chaos was inevitable, Kestra interjected. Would you prefer I had submitted to Zorian's ambitions and allowed him to use our marriage as a stepping stone to your throne? The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Emperor Valdris's eyes narrowed dangerously. Prince Zorian is a noble of standing. Prince Zorian is a schemer who sees our empire as his birthright, Kestra shot back. At least my chosen consort has no designs on your crown. Vincent felt increasingly out of his depth as the argument escalated around him. The political undercurrents were complex beyond his understanding, and he was apparently now a central figure in whatever power struggle was unfolding. There will be consequences, Emperor Valdris finally said, his voice deadly quiet. Both of you will remain in the palace until I decide how to address this situation. The human will be instructed in our ways. If he is to bear the title of Prince Consort, he must not embarrass our house further. As they were dismissed, Vincent caught Kestra's arm. Is it always like this? The politics? The tension? She looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. Welcome to royal life, Vincent Hayes. I hope you're a quick learner. Walking back through the crystal corridors, Vincent realized that his old life was truly over. He was no longer just a human diplomat caught in alien customs. He was now part of the royal family of one of the galaxy's most powerful empires, and he had no idea what that meant for either of them. 2 weeks had passed since Vincent's world turned upside down, and the palace routine had begun to feel almost normal. Almost. He stood in the training chamber, sweat beading on his forehead as he attempted to master the complex martial art that Kestra insisted was essential for any member of the royal family. Your stance is too rigid, she said, circling him with predatory grace. Thalorian combat flows like water, not stone. Vincent adjusted his position, trying to mirror her fluid movements. Easy for you to say. You've been doing this since childhood. Exactly my point. She moved behind him, and he felt the warmth of her body as she placed her hands on his shoulders to adjust his posture. Feel the energy flowing through the crystal floor. Let it guide your movements. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through Vincent's system. Over the past 2 weeks, their interactions had been formal, almost businesslike, as she taught him Thalorian customs, and he struggled to adapt to his new role. But this physical closeness awakened something he'd been trying to ignore. Like this? He asked, attempting a defensive sequence. Better, she said, stepping back. But you're still thinking too much. In combat, instinct must override analysis. Instinct, Vincent repeated, catching her eye. Is that what you used when you chose me? Kestra's expression grew guarded. That's different, is it? He set down his practice weapon. You've been teaching me your customs, your language, your combat techniques, but you've never really explained why you picked me out of hundreds of possibilities. Before she could answer, the chamber doors burst open. Counselor Avon rushed in, his usual composure shattered. Your Highness, Prince Consort, you must come immediately. There's been an attack on the Outer Rim colonies. House Drakemore ships were involved. Vincent felt ice form in his stomach. How many casualties? 3 settlements destroyed. Thousands dead. Avon's voice was grim. Prince Zorian is claiming it was necessary to maintain order after your marriage caused unrest. Kestra's face hardened to stone. He's using our union as justification for his aggression. In the war room, holographic displays showed the devastation across multiple star systems. Emperor Valdris stood before the central display, his fury a palpable force. Zorian grows bold, he growled as they entered. He tests our resolve. This is because of me, Vincent said quietly. My presence here has destabilized everything. No, Kestra said firmly. This is because Zorian sees weakness where there is none. He believes our marriage makes us vulnerable. Emperor Valdris turned to them, his expression calculating. Perhaps it does. A human prince consort raises questions about our strength. Then let me prove otherwise, Vincent said, surprising himself with his boldness. Give me a ship and a diplomatic mission. Let me show the galaxy that Earth and Thalor stand united. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You would risk your life for our empire? Vincent felt Kestra's gaze on him, intense and searching. It's my empire. Now too, isn't it? That evening, Vincent found himself alone with Kestra on one of the palace's observation decks. The twin suns were setting, painting the crystalline landscape in shades of gold and amber. You didn't have to volunteer, she said quietly. Yes, I did. Vincent leaned against the crystal railing. People are dying because of the political chaos our marriage created. I can't hide in the palace while that happens. Kestra was silent for a long moment. When I chose you, I thought I was selecting someone safe, someone who wouldn't complicate my life. And instead you got someone who volunteered for a suicide mission. She turned to face him, her violet eyes reflecting the sunset. You're not what I expected, Vincent Hayes. What did you expect? A puppet. A convenient political tool who would be grateful for the privilege of royal marriage. Her voice grew softer. I didn't expect someone who would challenge me in training, argue with my father, or volunteer to face down warships to protect people he's never met. Vincent felt something shift between them, a tension that had nothing to do with politics or diplomacy. Maybe that's because I didn't expect to care about any of this. About the empire, about your people. He paused, meeting her eyes. About you. The admission hung in the air between them. Kestra stepped closer, and Vincent could see the storm of emotions in her violet eyes. Vincent, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know this isn't what either of us planned, he continued, drawn by something he couldn't name. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. She reached up, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Her touch was electric, alien yet familiar. You realize that if you go on this mission, you might not come back? Are you asking me to stay? Instead of answering, she closed the distance between them, her lips finding his in a kiss that was both tender and desperate. Vincent felt himself responding, pulling her closer as the artificial boundaries between them crumbled. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Stay, she whispered against his lips. Please. Vincent cupped her face in his hands, marveling at the way her skin seemed to shimmer in the dying light. I have to go, but I'll come back to you. I promise. You can't promise that, she said, but her arms tightened around him. Then have faith in me, the way I'm learning to have faith in us. That night, for the first time since their marriage, they shared more than just a living space. They shared themselves, their fears, their hopes, and their growing realization that what had begun as political necessity was becoming something neither had dared to hope for. As Vincent held Kestra in his arms, watching the stars wheel overhead through the crystal ceiling, he realized that somewhere between learning to fight like a Thalorian and standing up to an emperor, he had found something he'd never expected. He had found home, and tomorrow, he would risk everything to protect it. Vincent's diplomatic mission had been a success. 3 border systems had renewed their allegiance to the Thalorian Empire, and Prince Zorian's influence had been contained. But as his ship approached Thaler Prime, emergency signals flooded the communication channels. Something was terribly wrong. Prince Consort were receiving distress calls from the palace, Captain Rice announced from the bridge. There's been some kind of attack. Vincent's blood ran cold. Kestra, he whispered. Then louder. Get us there now. Maximum speed. The crystalline palace was in chaos when Vincent arrived. Smoke rose from several damaged towers, and emergency crews worked frantically to contain fires that burned with unnatural blue flames. Vincent ran through the corridors, his heart pounding with fear for his wife. He found her in the medical bay, tending to injured palace guards. Relief flooded through him at seeing her unharmed, but his joy was short-lived when he saw the grim expression on her face. Vincent, she breathed, rushing into his arms. For a moment they held each other tightly, both afraid to let go. What happened? He asked, pulling back to examine her for injuries. Zorian made his move while you were away, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. He used some kind of banned weaponry, energy bombs that specifically target Thalorian physiology. My father... Her voice broke. Vincent felt his world tilt. Is he... alive, but barely. The healers aren't sure if he'll recover. Kestra's violet eyes filled with unshed tears. Zorian is claiming the throne, saying the Emperor is incapacitated, and the succession falls to the next male in line through marriage. But that would be you, she finished. As my consort, you have a claim to the regency until my father recovers or... She couldn't finish the sentence. Vincent stared at her in shock. I can't rule an empire. I'm barely learning. To be a prince, you don't have a choice, Counselor Avon said, appearing beside them with urgent news. Prince Zorian's forces are moving on the capital. He's demanding immediate recognition of his claim, and several houses are wavering in their loyalty. Vincent looked around the medical bay at the injured guards, the frightened staff, the uncertainty written on every face. These people needed leadership, needed someone to stand against Zorian's aggression. What would your father do? He asked Kestra. Fight, she said without hesitation. He'd never surrender to a usurper no matter the cost. Vincent nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do, but not just as Thalorians. He turned to Avon. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them that an ally of humanity is under attack and we're requesting immediate assistance. Vincent, you can't involve Earth in this, Kestra protested. This is our fight. No, he said firmly, taking her hands in his. This is our fight. Yours and mine, together. I'm not just a human anymore, and I'm not just a Thalorian. I'm both, and that gives us advantages Zorian never anticipated. Within hours, Vincent stood before the assembled nobility in the Great Hall, wearing the formal regalia of a prince consort for the first time. Beside him, Kestra radiated strength and determination, despite her father's condition. Lords and ladies of the Empire, Vincent began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. Prince Zorian offers you the rule of fear and conquest. He destroys colonies to prove his strength and uses forbidden weapons against his own people. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Several nobles who had been leaning toward Zorian began to look uncertain. But we offer you something different, Kestra continued, her voice harmonizing with his. A union not just of two people, but of two worlds. Earth's technology and resources combined with Thalorian wisdom and power. Vincent activated a holographic display showing the approaching Earth fleet, sleek human warships moving in formation, alongside Thalorian vessels. This is what real strength looks like. Not conquest, but alliance. Not fear, but partnership. The hall erupted in discussion, but before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Prince Zorian's fleet had arrived, demanding immediate surrender. Choose now, Vincent said, his voice cutting through the noise. Stand with us and fight for a future of cooperation and growth, or kneel to a tyrant who rules through terror. One by one, the noble houses declared their loyalty to the rightful succession. When the battle began, it was not just Thalorian against Thalorian, but a combined force of two worlds standing against tyranny. Vincent found himself commanding from the palace's war room, coordinating between human and Thalorian tactics in ways that confused and frustrated Zorian's forces. The prince had expected traditional Thalorian naval combat, not the innovative combined strategies that Vincent and Kestra developed together. His flagship is breaking through the outer defenses, Kestra reported, her hands dancing over the control interfaces. He's coming for the palace directly. Let him come, Vincent said grimly. It's time to end this. The final confrontation took place in the throne room itself. Prince Zorian, his face twisted with rage and desperation, burst through the crystal doors with a handful of loyal guards. You, he snarled, pointing at Vincent. You've destroyed everything. A human has no place on the Thalorian throne. You're right. Vincent said calmly, stepping forward with Kestra beside him. I have no place on the throne, but I do have a place here, with my wife, protecting our people. Your people? Zorian laughed bitterly. You're nothing but an alien. Pretender. No, Kestra said, her voice ringing with authority. He's my husband, my partner, and my choice. And unlike you, he's earned his place through service, not conquest. The battle was brief but decisive. Zorian's remaining forces, seeing their leader defeated and captured, surrendered quickly. The threat to the Empire was over. 6 months later, Vincent stood on the same observation deck where he and Kestra had first kissed, watching their children, human and Thalorian alike, playing in the palace gardens below. Emperor Valdris had recovered fully, stronger than ever, and had formally recognized Vincent not just as prince consort, but as his chosen heir alongside Kestra. Do you ever regret it? Kestra asked, joining him at the railing. The life you gave up? Vincent turned to look at his wife, her violet eyes sparkling with happiness, her hand resting protectively over the slight swell of her belly where their first child grew. Never, he said, pulling her close. I thought I was just attending a wedding. Instead, I found my destiny. Our destiny, she corrected, leaning into his embrace. As the twin suns set over Thalor Prime, painting the crystal spires in shades of gold and rose, Vincent reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. He'd come to an alien world as a diplomat and become a prince, a warrior, a leader, and most importantly, a husband and soon-to-be father. What had begun as political necessity had become the greatest love story in two worlds' history. A human man and an alien princess who had chosen each other against all odds and built a bridge between the stars. And as they watched their empire flourish under the rule of love and partnership rather than fear and conquest, Vincent knew that sometimes the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming, even if they started at someone else's wedding.